Israel made a grave mistake, a crime they cannot walk away from. These are not the words of a general, but of a cleric, 85 years old, one arm paralyzed, and yet more feared than missiles. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, supreme leader of Iran. Life will become bitter for them, he said. We won't let them escape justice. The war of words wasn't just rhetoric, it was a declaration. From a man who has outlasted revolutions, sanctions, and assassins. But who is this man behind the threats? A quiet scholar who once lived in a house without electricity, now shapes foreign policy for 85 million people and defies the West without flinching. To understand today, we must go back. In 1939, Ali Khamenei was born in Mashhad, one of Iran's holiest cities. But life was anything but holy. His family was poor, his father a low-ranking cleric, and his city was ruled by a king who hated religion. Under Reza Shah, Iran's monarchy banned hijabs, closed mosques, and arrested clerics. Religion was seen as backward, worship was rebellion, and young Ali grew up watching the faithful dragged into police trucks. Not for crime, but belief. Most kids played in dusty streets. Ali Khamenei sat under lantern light reading the Quran. At just 11, he entered the Islamic seminary. His teachers were decades older, but Ali debated, recited, and outlearned them all. He didn't just want to become a scholar. He wanted to protect Islam from a system trying to erase it. His childhood wasn't just pious, it was radical. And soon the radical would become dangerous. In 1962, everything changed. Ayatollah Khamenei, the firebrand cleric, launched a movement against the Shah. Young Khamenei didn't hesitate. He joined the underground resistance, smuggling leaflets, speaking in secret mosques, and preparing for war. Not with guns, but with sermons. The Shah's secret police, Savak, were everywhere, listening, watching, torturing. Khamenei was arrested not once, but 6 times. Each time he returned to the fight, more determined than before. Prison didn't break him, it forged him. Behind bars, he taught inmates. He turned solitary confinement into a classroom. For the guards, he was dangerous. For the prisoners, he was a leader. The regime had given him exactly what he needed: a stage, an audience, and a cause. His speeches spread through whispers. His words crossed borders. From a silent jail to packed mosques in Tehran, his voice grew louder. He didn't fear the Shah, and soon the Shah would fear him. In 1979, Iran erupted. The Shah fled, and the Islamic Revolution swept the nation. Ayatollah Khomeini returned from exile, and beside him, the quiet warrior who never gave up, Ali Khamenei. Khamenei was now no longer a prisoner. He was a preacher with power. Appointed as Tehran's Friday prayer leader, his sermons shook the capital. The voice once silenced was now broadcast across the nation and into history. But power has a price. In 1981, during a press conference, someone handed him a tape recorder. It exploded. Khamenei survived, but his right hand was destroyed. A permanent reminder that speaking truth in Iran could still cost blood. He returned to the pulpit with one arm limp at his side. But his message, stronger than ever. To his followers, the wound made him holy. To his enemies, it made him unstoppable. In 1982, Ayatollah Khamenei became president of Iran. The country was still bleeding from revolution. War with Iraq raged on. Sanctions tightened, but Khamenei held firm. He wasn't charismatic like Khomeini, but he was loyal, calculating, and fiercely devoted to building an Islamic state. During his presidency, he strengthened the Revolutionary Guards, the IRGC, turning them into a military, economic, and ideological powerhouse. They became his shadow army, and through them Khamenei learned what power truly meant. Control not by election, but by loyalty. Ayatollah Khomeini died. Iran mourned. And suddenly, the question, who would loom next? Many doubted Khamenei. He wasn't a grand Ayatollah. He wasn't the most senior cleric, but he was the most trusted. Within days, he was chosen as supreme leader. His rise was controversial. Critics whispered he lacked the credentials. But Khamenei moved fast. He appointed allies, silenced dissent, and over time transformed the role from symbolic figurehead into absolute ruler. Khamenei's enemy wasn't just inside Iran, it was a state he called illegitimate, a foreign outpost in Muslim land, Israel. While others pursued diplomacy, Khamenei made no secret of his hatred. The Zionist regime, he said, must vanish from the pages of time. He funded Hezbollah, armed Palestinian militants, delivered sermons that shook the region. The West called him a threat. His supporters called him a shield. Either way, his war wasn't with tanks. It was with ideology and influence. Ayatollah Khamenei has outlived 8 U.S. presidents, survived bombs, uprisings, sanctions, even COVID rumors. But he's still here, quiet, watchful, and more powerful than ever. Is he a protector of faith, a tyrant in robes, a revolutionary, or a relic? Perhaps he is all of them. But one thing is certain, he is the most enduring force in Iran's modern history. Khamenei didn't just inherit power, he engineered it. Piece by piece, he reshaped Iran's government. The judiciary, military, media, and even the economy, all placed under his indirect command. No decision escaped his orbit. This was no democracy. It was velayat-e-faqih, rule by the cleric. Every Friday, his words echoed from minbars across Iran. Every appointment, from judges to military commanders, required his blessing. And the Guardian Council, 6 of its 12 members were handpicked by him. Elections still existed, but only within his cage. In 2009, millions of Iranians protested alleged election fraud. The Green Movement. "Where is my vote?" they asked. The regime answered with bullets. Protesters were beaten, jailed, some never returned. And Khamenei, he called the protests a foreign plot. Neda Aga Sultan, shot in the heart. Her death was caught on camera. Her blood spilled across the street and across satellite TV screens worldwide. Khamenei never said her name, but Iran would never forget her. Khamenei distrusts the West like poison. He believes every handshake hides a dagger. To him, sanctions aren't about nukes. They're about crushing Islam. His survival strategy? Turn east. Strengthen ties with China, Russia, and anyone willing to defy Washington. While U.S. presidents warned and threatened, Khamenei never flinched. No tweets, no press briefings, just silence and strategy. He's not a man of outbursts. He's a man of slow knives. To his followers, he is not just a leader, he is a living symbol of divine endurance. To his enemies, he is the spider at the center of the web. But myth needs machinery, and Khamenei's machinery is terrifyingly efficient. He controls billions through the barnyads, shadowy religious foundations. They own banks, oil contracts, malls, tax-free, unchecked. With this empire, Khamenei funds everything from theology schools to militias in Syria. In old age, Khamenei speaks less, but his shadow looms larger. When he whispers, the country shifts. When he gestures, lives are reshaped. He doesn't need to rule from a throne. He rules from fear, from faith, from silence. He's 85, frail, and yet no successor has been announced. The Islamic Republic fears what comes next, a power vacuum, a new revolution. Because Khamenei isn't just a man, he is the system. And when the shadow vanishes, what happens to the machine? Some whisper names, his son Mojtaba, loyal clerics in calm, IRGC generals waiting in silence, but no one knows, because Khamenei doesn't speak of death, only of destiny. Some will remember him as the man who saved Islam from the West, others as the man who jailed poets and silenced protest. But history will not forget him, because you don't erase a man who ruled for over 3 decades without leaving scars. From jail cell to palace, from whispered sermons to state broadcasts, from student to survivor to supreme leader, his story is not a straight line, it is a spiral, circling around faith, power, and fear. What happens when one man controls belief and bullets? When silence is loyalty? When fear wears a turban? Iran's future may outlive Khamenei, but his fingerprints are forever burned into its soul. You don't have to admire him, but you must understand him, because understanding Ayatollah Khamenei is understanding how empires rise in silence, and how history isn't always written in ink. Sometimes it's written in scars. The Soviet Union collapsed. Saddam was hanged. Gaddafi was dragged through the streets. But Ayatollah Khamenei, he watched it all from his study in Tehran, quiet, alive, untouchable. Because unlike tyrants, he never ruled with gold or guns. He ruled with belief. There are 2 Irans, one of poetry, warmth, brilliant youth, and ancient beauty, and one of secret prisons, hijabs burned in protest, and censorship. Khamenei doesn't live in either. He lives in between, the axis where control meets belief. In recent years, women have risen as Iran's fiercest opposition, burning hijabs, cutting hair, chanting Zan, Zendegi, Azadi, woman, life, freedom. Khamenei blames the West, but this rage, it was born under his rule. Is it devotion or is it fear? Millions still follow him, but in quiet homes, in coded social media, Iranians speak of a new dawn. They respect the robe, but they no longer fear the shadow. When the day comes and he is gone, will Iran mourn him or exhale? No one knows, because for 35 years, Ayatollah Khamenei has been the storm, the shelter, and the silence between both. Maybe history doesn't roar, maybe it whispers, and somewhere in the silence of calm, the next ruler waits, watching, listening, learning from a man who outlived enemies, but never truly trusted anyone. He rarely leaves Iran, but his reach? Global. From Baghdad to Beirut, from Sana'a to Damascus, Khamenei's fingerprints are everywhere. Through militias, proxy wars, and shadow generals, he doesn't conquer lands. He infects ideologies. Qasem Soleimani was his sword, charismatic, feared, deadly, the general who carried out Khamenei's silent orders. When a U.S. drone ended his life in Baghdad, Iran wept, and Khamenei, for once, did not hide his tears. America is the great Satan, he declared, not just a political enemy, a moral one. Sanctions, threats, isolation, nothing changed him. And while presidents came and went, Khamenei remained, smiling faintly, as if he knew he would outlast them all. He never wore a crown, never claimed prophecy, but for millions his word became law. And in a country where voting exists, yet only loyalty wins, perhaps he is not a king, but something older, something harder to remove. History remembers Caesar, Napoleon, Lenin, but Ayatollah Khamenei may be remembered differently, not for wars won, but for a system he molded in silence. If Iran is a mountain, he is the erosion, quiet, relentless, permanent. Khamenei doesn't just rule through soldiers. He rules through stories, textbooks that glorify martyrs, children chanting prayers of loyalty, TV dramas where enemies wear Western suits. He rewrote not just law, but memory. Few know that Khamenei is also a writer. He reads Persian poetry, quotes Rumi in speeches, but behind soft words are sharp commands. Every public phrase is studied, every sentence calibrated like a blade. Even at night, his system breathes. Morality police roam streets. Online monitors scan tweets. The IRGC watches the borders. And in Qawm, young clerics memorize not just religion, but how to preserve the man who controls it. Some say the regime is cracking, that the youth no longer believe, that fear is fading. But if the Islamic Republic falls, it won't be with a bang, it will be with a whisper and 1,000 broken portraits. Ayatollah Khamenei is like a mountain glacier, cold, silent, immovable for decades. But glaciers don't announce collapse. They melt slowly until rivers overflow and no one remembers how long it stood, only what came after. Khamenei never needed a palace or golden robes. His crown was silence. His palace? A nation trained not to question. While kings fall to bullets, he rises through shadows because silence doesn't bleed. He ruled with sermons and steel, with ink and executions. He read poetry and silenced poets. He wore no uniform, but commanded armies. In Khamenei's world, duality isn't contradiction, it's survival. Strip away the title, the robes, the minarets, what remains? A man with fears, with scars, a hand that no longer moves, a legacy he cannot control once he is gone. Across Iran, millions of young faces wait. Some pray for change, others prepare for it. Their future will not be written by sermons, but by screams or silence, depending on what the shadow leaves behind. History does not always roar. Sometimes it passes like a shadow on a wall, and when that shadow is gone, the world looks around and wonders, was it ever truly there, or did we simply fear the silence?